Okay. Okay, I think we're good to go.
Yeah, good to go.
So yeah, this is a YouTube briefing on the Southwest Marine Ecosystems. I'm Ruth Williams. I'm the Marine Conservation Manager for Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and have been involved in Southwest Marine Ecosystems for many years since inception. So Bob.
I'm Bob Earll. I'm the current convener of Southwest Marine Ecosystems.
So we'll just start with what is the Southwest Marine Ecosystems Model?
Yeah, well, in short, I'll read this. It sounds a bit crazy to do it so formally, but because it's just kind of a condensed version. But Southwest Marine Ecosystems is an annual regional program of communications and reporting on the marine environment in the southwest of England, which has a large outreach to the marine environment. That's it in a kind of one sentence nutshell. But if one takes a rather more formal view of that, then we've got aims and objectives. But the aim of the Southwest Marine Ecosystems is to produce an annual report based on the state of Southwest Seas, to build social capital among the organisations and networks and individuals involved at a regional level for those people who are involved in research and management and basically the kind of wider community. You could summarise it another way, which is essentially to say Southwest Marine Ecosystems, often it's abbreviated to SWME. Okay, people just say, oh, SWME. SWME. It provides a communication platform, webinars, a conference, an annual report, and we're doing some press media at the moment on the state of the Southwest Seas.
Great. So that's sort of the basics, but what are the key ideas? What's the unique selling points, the USPs of Southwest Marine Ecosystems, or SWME?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can we'll talk about them as USPs, the unique selling points for this thing, but you can actually couch these as objectives as well if you want to use that kind of framing. And SWME can be broken down into a number of these. First of all, it's annual. Our systems generally are much longer for reporting, but this is an annual communication process that keeps people informed. It's got a number of elements of communication. It's got meetings, conferences and webinars. It's kind of evolved in COVID, in that way. And another thing that evolved in COVID was really that we focused on the state of Southwest Seas. So we're communicating annually by a report, which is then focuses on the media as well once we've done it. One of the other powerful elements of this is that it's happening at a regional scale, so that people know one another. There's a kind of regional resonance. There's a sort of immediacy and kind of connection of people to that regional identity. So that makes a big difference too. And the people involved, this is the sort of final element of this. In the steering group, really essentially have the freedom to act as they want in terms of setting the program up or what the program covers. So in effect, there's it's an annual program. It's about communications, meetings, and a report at a regional scale, and with a group of people who've got the freedom to actually sort of set the direction and decide what's going to happen.
Yeah. And talking about those themes, what are the key sort of thematic topics that SWME currently cover? Obviously, there's regional relevance, but we've got the set ones that we do cover.
Yeah. So the thematic topics break down into two categories. One is the natural system side of things, and it goes from oceanography and meteorology, and including storms, plankton, seabed and seashore, birds, fish, seals, and cetaceans. So each of those topics is covered by webinars, a session at the conference, a chapter in the report, and also the press release. The management topics we're covering consistently these days include marine planning. We hope to include licensing with that, marine protected areas, fisheries, water quality, and also plastic pollution, but that probably extended as well. So there are about 12 or 13 categories, depending on what the year is, of thematic topics we cover in the webinars and at the conferences and in the chapters of the annual report, and then we do that for the media. As an interesting aspect of this, but it's in the kind of paper briefing, it also links, these categories also link very closely with the UK marine strategy, and we've got a table which maps these, which is actually very handy.
Yeah, I think that's been really useful to see that cross-cutting thing with the marine strategy. So you've mentioned previously a little bit, but who are our audience? Who's involved in SWME? Who do we pull together?
Yeah, we've broken this down in this particular response here in really four kind of categories. First of all, there's this audience. There's the widest audience. What we call the community of interest is actually to deal with it in numbers. There are over 1,250 on our bulk emailing list, for example, who we mail regularly with details of these webinars and reports and conferences and so forth. That's also expanded in relation to social media in the last couple of years as well. In relation to contacts with the YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. The idea behind SWME has always been about social capital, about building the relationships between people as well, and so there's a kind of that is kind of critical idea in relation to this. That effectively the networking process at the conference enables people to make contacts, to build relationships with one another, which is important. Not only within relation to their own thematic topics, but beyond. Exploring the kind of the interaction between, say, cetaceans and oceanography. So, one wants to look at the ecosystem aspects of this as well. It's not just a siloized approach. And then I suppose to cover the, who's involved with steering this process. Well, it's rather interesting. Initially we had a steering committee and a group of editors, but now that group meets together, virtually, when we're in full throttle a couple of times a month, but but the rest of the time perhaps once a month. It's got about 25 people who are actively engaged in all of them contributing something. And the idea is to spread the load across a large number of people, but they're effectively the steering meetings which run throughout the year.
Right. I just want to sort of follow up on a bit of that. The audience, the participants in SWME is really important to me, because it's one of the few conferences and reporting processes that really places value on citizen scientists as much as the academics and the scientists proper, if you like. Yeah. And I think that's a real strength in citizen scientists have that platform and share their data, and it's used with the same value as those others. So it's a real strength.
That's really, really important, because there are a number of programs in Southwest Marine Ecosystems which in fact simply where we'd have precisely no data on strandings unless there was a citizen science program. We'd have no data on marine litter unless there was a massive citizen science initiative, and that that is true of a number of the elements of SWME and the way we report stuff. So the citizen science element, bringing the professionals with the kind of the volunteer sector is massively important.
Yeah. You've mentioned the steering group, but how is SWME financed? How do we run it? Well,
this is quite interesting and quite different from many other kind of organisations. SWME isn't terribly formal, but the reality is that we don't need external funding to actually have a SWME program, because if you like, the financial aspects of it spread across a number of organisations who contribute willingly on a yearly basis. The major institutional backers who provide the platform for the webinars, PML and the Marine Biological Association, who provide a whole host of other facilities. So those institutional supports, including Exeter and Plymouth University, a whole host of other people who give their time, freely, enable us to run this quite elaborate program, for no, we can run it. We're going to run it for a number of years to come, simply because we don't have to depend on fundraising to actually run it. When we get to a point of actually wanting to run a conference, we just simply charge a fee that covers the cost of the conference. Simple as that. And so it gives us, so this is a strange financial model in many ways. It's a very simple financial model in many ways, but it is a major strength in relation to the SWME model.
Yeah, it really is. So we've talked about pulling the data together and the conference. Tell us a bit about the State of the Seas reporting, that reporting annual change at that level.
Yeah. During COVID, one of the things I came to, I went to a couple of webinars on State of the Seas reporting, and I thought to myself, well, SWME is doing this. We could call our annual report the State of the Southwest Seas, essentially, because State of the Seas reporting essentially is a comparative process. You record the State of the Seas, then you come back after a period of time to see what's changed. And SWME is doing that every year in this kind of annual process. So it's perfectly legitimate, in a sense to frame it that way. To put it in context, we're used to the UK Marine Strategy or the OSPAR strategy or the European Marine Framework Directive in the past, doing that on a 5 or 6 year timescale. And of course, one of the major strengths of SWME is that we can do that on an annual basis. And there's huge benefits of that, not least in the fact that you kind of be able to pick up change that's happening quickly. A lot of things happen much more quickly than a 5 or 6 year cycle will enable you to do. So in a sense, we are now looking, very systematically to make those comparisons and trying to make those comparisons more systematic. And I think what has become blindingly obvious to us is that, effectively people are making research decisions and management decisions much more quickly than on a 5 or 6 year cycle. They're doing it, they're seeing which way the wind's blowing, and they're making decisions on an annual basis. So SWME just plugs into a shorter time frame. We've been producing the SWME report for 9 years now. It covers the thematic topics I've described earlier on. It's got better, and it's getting fuller, and it's getting more systematic in the way it deals with things. It's not perfect by any means yet, but we're kind of working on that. We're recognizing what we're doing and making, and everybody, in a sense, is working towards making that more effective, more efficient in terms of the way it's working.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how it is evolving, and it is becoming a much more useful and usable document. But yeah, that annual reporting level is I think crucial to it. Do you want to just finish off by just explaining that sort of annual process of
the timing of all of this and the mechanism we use in the last couple of years goes roughly like this. We can reconvene the whole group in October. And one level it sounds kind of crazy, but basically you're signing people up for the coming year, which because the State of the Seas report covers, and this, we're working on one now, covers 2022, but obviously the program of webinars and things reflects that past year. So we convene in October. We then have a series of meetings just to make sure that kind of editors, in particular, are kind of on board with what's happening. The webinars take place in sort of February, March time. The individual subject webinars, they're hour and a half or so in length. Often with 3 or 4 or 5 speakers, going into some detail about each of these topics. So that's quite, they're quite interesting in their own right. They're posted on the YouTube channel, and you can view those on the YouTube channel. We then have a conference, and the conference has also become rather more refined. For the last 2 years, we've had it at the Plymouth Marine Laboratory, where each of the editors speaks for 20 minutes on the particular topic. And the value of that is, of course, that the whole audience gets to hear what's going on with cetaceans and seals and oceanography and marine planning and marine protected areas. And we've explored the interactions between those topics. And it's the kind of, the nature of ecosystems is that everything is kind of related. Yeah. It's not in those silos. So the conference is aimed at basically bringing the relationships of things together, as well as enabling the networking side of things. And networking is really extraordinarily powerful. I think I had 25 conversations at the PML conference in April. So, you know, you could just simply, you know, that is incredibly valuable. But we'll also say the webinars are incredibly valuable too, because, you know, for anyone from the outside, they can actually view that. We've got not only enough, you know, a huge number of people actually attending the webinars, but also twice, 3 or 4 times as many people actually attending afterwards, watching this on YouTube. Then the annual report, you know, for last year is being finalised as we speak. That happens in the sort of, you know, effectively April, May, June time, and we hope to get it published in July. Then we have a little pause for a break, and then the whole thing happens all over again. You know, essentially in October. You know, in October. So that's the time frame for it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Is there anything else that you want to summarize? I think that's a pretty good overview, but we could obviously go into great more detail, but this is just a quick
I think that's kind of been pretty good. And thanks very much, Ruth, for taking us through it so systematically. I mean, we've got a paper briefing which covers these points, which has got links to the SWME website and the SWME YouTube channel. It's also got a table, we call it table 1, which basically maps the kind of thematic topics onto the UK marine strategy. This is not, I suppose that, one conclusion is this is not a done deal completely. It's kind of constantly evolving and constantly kind of changing, but it's actually it's becoming much more effective and efficient in terms of what it does, and much more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah, and just sort of to finish off from my perspective, it's been great to see it evolve, but it's a fantastic forum for pulling together that regional data. And from a sort of a wildlife trust and an NGO's point of view, we're always looking at indicators of change and where can, what are the trends, where do we need to focus our conservation action? And SWME gives us that holistic view on a really rapid time frame that we can sort of say, actually, that's pretty natural, that's a normal occurrence, but this is something we need to start focusing on. We can dedicate some of our time and energy to that, as can some of the other statutory agencies, and we can really react a little bit more quickly. And in terms of nature recovery and trying to act 30 by 30, we need that sort of rapid and local resolution to act on. So I think, yeah, SWME and the model are a way forward. Okay, anything else to add?
No, that's great, thanks.
All right, I'll pause it there, and thanks, Bob.
Cheers.